Everyone loves a good story. A story's a powerful thing. History is made up of stories. Stories shape how we think. They can entertain us, or they can teach us. They can enslave us, or they can free us. Stories can define us, or they can defeat us. Stories often guide us, but stories can mislead us. Stories are powerful things. But the real power is held by the writer, the person who decides what the story might contain. And in relation to the tower and the fire, O'Hagan writes his story with every single page. The people want justice for Grenfell, and justice won't be controlled. But I'd say a main form of justice is how their story is told. This is in relation to Andrew O'Hagan. It's Andrew O'Hagan. He's the editor-at-large of LRB and Esquire. He just released an article related to the fire. The article was arguable. It caused a lot of hurt. Not to mention it was tiresome at 60,000 words. 60,000 words. He must think that he's impressing us. I just think the editor-at-large needs an editor. Now, O'Hagan spent 10 months producing this piece. That's a lot of time, finance and focus. And in an interview he gave after the release, he seeks to clarify his intentions and motives. He says it was to examine evidence from an independent stance, without any prejudice, with truth at its heart, to cut through the narrative established at the start, a narrative he desperately tries to tear apart. So he starts with real stories told by the survivors, victims who lived through the violence of the fire. There's justice in a story, but justice for who? Who does his version do justice to? Well, it hasn't done justice to the people who he interviewed. They've said that they were misled on how he'd used their interviews, that some lines were fiction that he put in quotes as if it was true. This alone naturally has caused a lot of disrepute. Understandably, people registered objections. Objections then led to formal corrections. There's already been several made in different sections. At this rate, post-complaint, there'll be nothing left in. Victims of the fire trusted O'Hagan. They gave him access to their lives and situations. He should have felt privileged that they opened up. But how did he repay them? He betrayed their trust. Now, one could argue that some of these complaints were simply nothing more than innocent mistakes. What? Quoting things that weren't said? That would be a deliberate act in appalling taste. But what else do you expect from a bloke like this? Somebody who likes to use quotes like this. Of course, people found it hard after the fire, one observer said to me, but others, just as understandably, are finding their new life hard to give up. As if victims prefer their new life to the one before the tragedy, like a pram or an Xbox could replace their family. That insinuation is truly unforgivable, and his decision to include it is criminal. Morally, choosing to represent them like that, victims would give anything to have their old lives back. The way that he portrays them stinks of dishonesty, and every single one of them deserves an apology. Because that's just not what we do, Andrew. We treat people with respect, not like you, Andrew. You said you liked Niall's smile. How nice of you, Andrew. So I added humour, so you'd like me too, Andrew. But you know who he likes best? Try guess. The victims of the fire? Nope, try again. The survivors? Nope, try again. The firefighters? No, he doesn't like them. No, some people look up to Muhammad Ali, Marcus Garvey, the work of Dali, Chomsky, Loki, Akala, John Lennon. O'Hagan praises Paget Brown and Rock Fielding Mellon. When he writes about them both, it's like a glowing hagiography, like they're both some sort of saints in a monastery. Honestly, his tone alone really is telling. All he wants to do is save Paget Brown and Fielding Mellon. Just look at the way he talks about housing, which he really goes to town on. He talks about the council like the people you can count on, explaining how they paid for hotels with such pride, like people in hotels is something to be proud of. Hotels for the first few weeks is understandable, but after a year, that's not exactly practical. Very many families who suffered such a tragedy still don't have a home, and that's absolutely damnable. But still, he presents their defence. Holgate said, "We shall have to say they might be rehoused in Brent, or Hammersmith, or Westminster, not only in Kensington. He knew the properties within the borough didn't exist." There's 1,400 empty homes in Kensington, while survivors beg for them. That's negligence. The government should buy them all and turn them into council stock, and then they should supply them all and keep them all at council costs. Or maybe the council could serve CPOs on them. There's $1/3 billion in reserves. We need homes for them. They'll CPO the homes of working people on estates, but when it comes to empty houses, then the CPOs are no for them. But of course, O'Hagan will skip this bit and direct you to the real problem: immigrants. He lived in that community. But he doesn't pretend that immigration since 2006 hasn't exacerbated the housing crisis. You can't bring in more people without building more housing. Simple. That quote literally implies that the reason people were still living in hotels 1 year after the fire is in part because of immigrants. And the London Review of Books thinks this legitimate. So councils keep demolishing the flats our kids were raised in, but Andrew wants to drop it like the problem's migration. No, the problem is you're an idiot, and possibly a racist you were trained and made you into it. If they're not building any homes, then nobody can live in them. The problem isn't immigrants, the problem is the council who you probably have dinner with. And then he attacks the fire service. The professional fire service's response to the fire at Grenfell Tower was anything but strong. The biggest weakness, all my sources agreed, was the slowness in telling residents to evacuate. Quite simply, it caused nearly all of the 72 deaths. Those firefighters risked their lives for them. They put their actual bodies in the fire for them. They showed true love. They would have died for them. Their parents and children would have cried for them. None of us could know the way they tried for them. They cry for them every single night for them. And now you want them to do time for them and put them in a cell because you like your friends. If he wants to blame the fire service for the loss of life, then the way he went about that really wasn't right. People have opinions, but the way that he presented it was, to put it mildly, hugely insensitive. And it's testament to his whole attitude when this subject deserves every respect. Just look at the way he attacks Grenfell Action Group and other heroes who tried to save their friends. He describes Ed and Francis from Grenfell Action Group as committed local agitators. Wow. I mean, wow. So now, apparently, not wanting to die makes you an agitator. If you're trying to save your life, that makes you an agitator. Begging for help, agitator. Sending letters as well, agitator. Anyone who won't be ignored, they call an agitator. One of the things that Grenfell Action Group requested was a justified independent review. If the TMO and council had properly addressed it, then the things that caused the deaths would have come into view. Even if he had valid points about activists, the mainstream media, the mainstream narrative, even if he found blame with others he attacks within, none of that would mean that both his buddies weren't factored in. He speaks as if people only blame the council leaders, like it's a choice between them and someone else. But people want the truth, to whomever that may lead us. But in my opinion, they're responsible as well. But Andrew just wants to twist this narrative, twisting everything so it fits his narrative, selectively picking all the bits he's happy with, says he's seeking justice, but he just miscarries it. That's why he belittles all the activists. That's why he vilifies the narrative. That's why he tries to minimize the damages. That's why I believe he wrote this whole manuscript. And why did he choose to release it now? That's a big question we've all been asking. Is it a coincidence that he speaks out the very same week that the inquiry started? Maybe he chose to release it now to maximise his readership. The year anniversary would surely be the peak for it. Or maybe the whole thing and timing was entirely to influence the outcome of the inquiry. I don't know, but we both know. Everyone loves a good story. A story's a powerful thing. History is made up of stories. Stories shape how we think. But the real power is held by the writer, the person who decides what the story might contain. And in relation to the tower and the fire, O'Hagan writes his story with every single page. The people want justice for Grenfell, and justice won't be controlled. But I'd say a main form of justice is how their story is told. So get it right.